Welcome, everybody. My name is Anthony Kazazis, and I am the director of the NYC Network Group, as well as the NYC Real Estate Expo. And I want to welcome you all for coming out and listening to our second series with Larendee Roos at Roos Advisories. Larendee Roos is the founder and CEO of Roos Advisors. Since 2003, she has served as a strategic business advisor to over 200 management teams ranging from startups to publicly traded companies. She is a skilled in every aspect of business development, sales administration, finance, and operations. During her executive career, she has advised more than 100 asset purchases, mergers, and company acquisitions. Her partner, Boucher, is the president of Roos Advisors. He is also the director of the Masters of Human Resources Executive Program for Utah State University. He was the Chief Human Resource Officer for Extra Space Storage, a self-storage REIT. During his 14 plus years, he has helped the company's transition from 150 employees to 38 properties to a publicly traded company with over 3,000 employees and 1,100 properties. He is also a SHRM certified professional. Their company is dedicated to assisting business owners and C-suite executives to build agile teams that are more productive, more profitable, and truly satisfied in their lives and careers. As a DISC certified specialist, they facilitate seminars and training around management, leadership, sales, marketing, operations, human resources, including recruitment, education, and retention. Ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, I'd like to welcome you to Larendee Roos. And again, please be aware that this is a 4-week series. Larendee will be talking this first week now regarding defining moments for her team and for your team. A series again of 4 weeks on the 9th and the 17th and the 23rd. We'll be back with Larendee Roos offering different topics as well.
Anthony, thank you so much for that introduction. I think I'm going to take it first. First of all, to all of you who've joined us, thank you so much for joining us and welcome. We very much appreciate the opportunity to chat with you this morning and to share some insights. It's funny how things work in life. You know, I was listening to Anthony's gracious introduction, and it's kind of embarrassing in a way, and at the same time, it reminds me that my partner Larendee and I have had some crazy experiences and some wonderful experiences, and no doubt, you all have been through some of those yourselves, and you're certainly facing some challenges today. So we wanted to take you through this morning a discussion, really, and the way we want to handle this is rather than us just talking to you for the time that we have remaining, we want to talk with you specifically. And so we want you to use the chat today, and feel free to ask questions of us as we go. We'll have a pause here and there and make sure that we get to as many of your questions and observations as possible. This is about you, really, and it's about us helping you and facilitating this great, important notion of creating a cohesive team. We've probably all been on teams. I spend a lot of time in my academic setting teaching about teams, but I also spend time in our consulting helping people create teams that actually work. Teams are more than just assigning people and putting them in one place or on one particular project. So today we'd like to walk you through some keys to creating a cohesive team. And Larendee's driving, so if she can get to the next slide. We know for a fact that engaged leadership equals engaged teams, and really a key to all of the performance of our teams is leaders, and what you and I do as leaders. Some of you may have come into leadership by simply being given a title. You may have been appointed such. You may have been worked your way through with the ranks to get there. You may be joining a company new. And so you have this task before you of creating engagement and creating teams that actually work. The object of teams is not to create the team. The object is to get work done and to win, right? And so as you think about this, how do you know when your teams are highly productive and effective? What gauges do you use? What measures do you use to get there? And what I'd like you to do with this question, how do you know when your teams are highly productive and effective? We'd like to have you put your answer in chat and write us a message as to how you know that happens. We know that, in fact, less than 17% of the workforce worldwide says that they're engaged, which should be a staggering number for all of us. That suggests that 83% of people working are not fully engaged in work. And you know what that means, where they're giving their hearts and souls and they care about it and they act like partners and they want to see things through and they want to feel that anxiousness and that excitement and enthusiasm of succeeding. And yet less than 17% report that they do. So type in the chat your answer. How do you know when your teams are highly productive and effective? And we'll get to those as we go. So Larendee, if we can go to the next slide. So one of the first principles that we'd like to cover today in our effort to help you develop a higher sense of leadership and a higher level of result is trust. Trust is really the foundational piece and our first piece that we'd like to talk about today. 63% of people surveyed don't trust their leadership, whether in business or government. And we've seen that, experience that today as we've seen some of the challenges that are happening in our country and the commentary that goes back and forth, and the lack of trust is staggering. Think about what that means to you. I think sometimes as leaders, we don't do a really great job of creating an environment of trust. We don't always give people the opportunity to be heard and to really have a sense that we actually understand what's going on with them and that we can be empathetic and caring and concerned about them to help them do their very best work. Trust is a key. And if we can go to the next slide, as we think about some of the elements of trust, Jim Davis, a colleague of mine who taught for years at Notre Dame University, did some research and actually suggests that trust is perhaps the hardest quality to regain once lost. And if you think about that in our relationships, that's true, isn't it? It really takes a tremendous amount of work to regain that trust. So rather than lose it, it's important for us to understand how to keep it. And one of the key elements of that is it's expected of you as a leader. People expect you to do what you say, to keep your word, to follow through. To be involved in the details of what's going on in their lives. And those aren't always easy things. I can recall on multiple occasions being careful and cautious with what I was telling my team because I wasn't sure I was going to be able to deliver on it. And in that pause, even in that brief period of time where I was trying to make sure that I was authentic and actually was able to deliver, um, people wondered if they could trust me, if I would come through. These are challenging times, particularly with our communication and particularly with trust. But again, the number one foundational piece in our hope to develop cohesive teams is trust. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Larendee to take us through the next set of slides. Larendee? Oh, sorry. Yeah, I wanted to also talk about this really quickly. What keeps us from trusting and what keeps us from being trusted? These are all very important pieces of this foundational trust. And as you can read them, a sense of injustice. You're not being fair. You give this person more time than me. Yeah, I get that they're the top salesperson, but they're also the biggest jerk. There's a lack of hope, a lack of confidence. Will you do what you say? Will we get there? Will we really achieve? Are our goals lined? Then the last one is a desire to change. I want things to change, but I don't know how responsible I am for that change, or what's my part of change, or is it really worth it? Can I really risk? Is it safe for me to make the effort to change? All of these equate to some sort of sense of fear that keep us from trusting and keep us from going forward in this very important first step. So I see that we have some comments coming in, but I'm going to turn that time now to Larendee. Larendee, go ahead, please.
You can go ahead, Gianni.
So Bruce, thank you so much. So we're going to talk a little bit more about what goes on when people are living in a place of fear. So we have kind of two places we want to talk about this morning. We have the critter state, which is that reptilian state that many of us are familiar and aware of. And then we have the smart state. So when we're in the critter state, you can see that we're only using a very small portion of our brain. So it's important for us as leaders to recognize what's really going on with our teams when they're living in a place of fear, distrust, lack of hope. There literally is a physiological reason that supports the mindset of where they're living. It's important for us as leaders to recognize this so that number one, we don't take it personally, and number two, we can help them step into the higher consciousness. So when we can bring compassion, when we can bring understanding, and we can recognize that whatever fears someone may be currently experiencing really truly is a temporary state, and we offer an encouragement, open place for them to explore what's going on, what we literally do is open up the ability and capacity for that person to expand and use multiple parts of their brain, the limbic system, that helps them activate centers that help them get into a more creative, higher state of consciousness. So when we go here, we talk about that, in fact, conflict can be productive. And so my question for you is there a place for conflict in the workplace? How do you handle tense situations when you are working with teams? And the second principle for us in building a cohesive team is to have a place, a safe place, an opportunity where productive conflict is not only allowed, but it's encouraged. And people are able to bring their fears, their concerns, their worries, and bring their ideas to the table. So put the answer in chat if you have it. You know, do you have a safe place? Do you have a forum? Do you have a place where people can express their fears, their worries, their concerns, where you can actually nurture and help them in this productive conflict state? So 53% of people surveyed do not listen to people or organizations with whom they often disagree. This is really an astounding number. So when surveys were conducted, and Forbes was also part of this survey, they found that people who feel unheard or people that they have a difference of opinion with often don't listen actively. So imagine this going on in the workplace. So this is where getting consensus and getting understanding of where each other's coming from is so mission critical. And as leaders, it's our responsibility. It's our responsibility to make sure that people have a place to voice their beliefs and their concerns. In addition, people are 4 times more likely to ignore data that doesn't support their beliefs. So we also know this as negativity bias, that whatever belief I kind of have my belief, and then I go out and I gather the information that's going to support my belief. So when we're trying to get people to change their minds from a place of data and logic, it's not really going to work out so well for us. So then what are we to do? What's the solution? So with Roos Advisors, we again use a very participatory model where all the key stakeholders and all of the members of the organization are allowed to openly communicate, including engaging in this productive conflict. So again, we have the opportunity to use all of the areas and to be in a smart state and come from a place of compassion, a place of higher consciousness. So again, when we come from a place of mutual understanding, we're able to explore all of the options, both physiologically and also from an organizational perspective. One of our favorite tools that helps us do this is DISC Agile EQ. So Anthony talked about that. We're actually DISC certified strategic partners. And we love DISC because it's an easily understood methodology where I'm able to become more self-aware. And when I'm more self-aware of where my go-tos are, my tendencies and my preferences, and then I'm aware of what others' preferences and tendencies are, then we can begin to do what we call meeting somewhere in the middle and being able to flex. So imagine that I'm very outgoing and that relationships are highly important to me and that I get a lot of energy and fulfillment from engagement. And then I have someone on the other side of the spectrum who's more resolute, standing their ground, speaking up about problems and pushing through resistance. And I'm asked to be in a situation where maybe we have a disagreement or a difference of opinion. If we both take our polar opposite positions, it's going to be kind of difficult for us to come to a place of consensus. And if we're both leaders, where's that going to leave our teams? So we use this tool to do self-assessment as well as understanding where others are coming from. This tool of understanding and assessment coupled with real life solutions and paired with real life problems in the workplace, really it helps teams go to what we call the next level. So I'm going to turn it back to Bruce, and we're talking about the third principle of our work and the third principle of building a cohesive team, which is commitment.
Yeah, thanks, Larendee. I noted that there were some people who used the chat in our first question about, how do we know when our teams are engaged and they're really functioning well? And a couple of pieces of feedback. They're coming up with many of their ideas and solutions. Another one was positive feedback from our clients and the community that we serve. That's an excellent one. There's open communication, flexible troubleshooting, and transparency within the team. Well, I love those. Those are all really good signs that we're doing good things. So now, as we've talked about those first two principles, and again, please use chat on the questions that Larendee just asked you. We'd love to hear your feedback on this. Principle number 3 is commitment, and commitment to meaningful and personal goals are often keys to leadership that yields results and that creates an environment of positivity. Commitment to team goals is also a part of that formula. So not only am I committed to my own personal agenda, if you will, but my personal agenda or my personal goals actually fit in to team goals. This increases the likelihood of success and our ability to help people pivot away from being afraid. But I think it's important to note that these two goals are kind of like the scales of justice, right? We try to get those as much as in balance as is possible. And it's important that they are. If we're overemphasizing our own personal goals, then we may not be actually working towards the greater good, if you will, and we're just getting ours. And if we kind of forget about individual goals, when all we care about is team goals, then we have a tendency to be actually telling people what their goals are, as opposed to having them come up with their own. We know that when we impose cascaded goals, we get results, but they're not really the kind of engaging results that we want. It's not the most effective way. A better way is to suggest this is where our team needs to go because of the needs of the business and so forth. Now, how do we get there? And what kind of goals can we develop on a personal and on a team basis to actually arrive? Those are all important questions. There's 5 steps to getting this commitment from our employees and from our team. And obviously, we need this commitment. And in that commitment, then we begin to build engagement. The first one is to discover and then develop common objectives. That is, what are they? Frequently, employees say, as we go in and chat with them, it's not infrequent to hear an employee say, I know what I'm doing with my particular task. I do this thing. How it rolls up to a greater good, I couldn't tell you. And that's tragic, really. I mean, it's something that we were really concerned about. So to help them to discover and then develop the common objectives, really important. Number 2, ensure active communication. We like to say that communication is currency. There are levels in organizations and teams and organizations that aren't directly responsible for sales or revenues. And so they're called cost centers, right? And people say, you're a cost center. It's almost like a negative connotation. But the truth is, even in those cost centers, communication is currency. It generates value. And it means so much if we can actively ensure that communication is going on. Number 3, commitment and consent versus consensus. It's one thing to say, are you committed to this, or will you commit to this? It's another thing to say, well, we all have to be on the same page all the time. These are challenging things. Do I have your commitment? Do I have a consensus vote? We all voted for it, but are we really committed to it? I have been in boardrooms where people have all raised their hand and said, yes, I'm willing to do this. And then when they leave the room, their commitment level is 0. And they felt pressured to vote for something they weren't going to do. We have to have both. It's nice to be able to have consensus, and it's important that that consensus leads to actual commitment. Let me go to the next slide, Larendee, please. So from there, the 4th and 5th pieces are accept mistakes as likely. In teams, we're dealing with people, we're dealing with fast-moving challenges, particularly with what's going on in our workforce today. Peter Drucker suggested that the workforce today is like being in a raft in the middle of a whitewater rapid. It's just churning. Things are changing so rapidly. So we're going to make mistakes. We're going to make assumptions, and we're going to make decisions that are wrong. And I love the idea, and it personally resonates with me, to just fix it fast, to just try to do the best you can to correct the mistake and move on. And then the last thing is set achievable goals with hard deadlines. And I think a key here is to help our people set their goals, not just reflect what we want from them, but rather get them to make a commitment and to set goals that are meaningful to them, so that their goal gets in here in their heart and they're really desirous to achieve them. So this piece of commitment, this idea that commitment is key to leadership, is really an important characteristic in getting our teams moving and getting them achieving. So Larendee, you want to take it from there?
Thank you, Bruce. So question, on a scale of 1 to 10, how would you rate your personal ability to meet project deadlines and objectives? Go ahead and put that in the chat for us if you would. On a scale of 1 to 10, how would you rate your personal ability to meet project deadlines and objectives? And we really do appreciate those of you who are participating in the chat. Remember, this is an interactive workshop and there's reward for participation. Stay on till the end. And we have a value-based gift of $250 that we're going to give to a participant. So we're going to move on now to the principle number 4 of accountability. And really, accountability always starts with leadership. And I believe all of us have been in organizations where it's the top-down truth of I expect, therefore you need to do really doesn't move the needle, in addition to the fact that it leaves people, again, going back to the sphere state. So what we really do know is that when we honor people's personal goals and they're tied to a bigger purpose, then we're able to really begin to move the needle. So if that's what I expect from my team members, is that purpose-driven way of being, I also need to have that for myself. So I need to have a purpose. I need to know why I get up every day to do what I do. And when that purpose is well defined, and it could be anything from I want to spend more time with my family, to I want a second vacation home, to I want to do something really meaningful in the world, to I want to take more vacations, to I want to spend more time in a volunteerism, or I want to give more money to charity. Lots of different purposes, lots of different reasons for why we do the work. I always say it doesn't matter. Once we figure out what our purpose is, and I heard the speaker who spoke last week, Ricky Mendez, talk about this, that it really then doesn't matter whether we're a butcher, baker, candlestick maker, because whatever my purpose for being in the world, I'm going to sew into the channel and the tool by which I execute from a different place. So we have the opportunity as leaders to help mentor our teams to really tie in and sew into that. And there's been many times in my life, both as an executive in corporate and also as a business advisor, where we realized that from a purpose perspective, what someone was doing was not aligned. So it simply wasn't going to work long term. And then when we had an opportunity to sit down with those individuals and show them that we really believe in you and we're here for you, and even if that means that we're going to part ways for the time being, we can come from a very different place. The person's respect, their purpose is maintained intact, and also so as well as the teams. So it starts with leadership. It starts with us knowing what our purpose is. Why do I get up every day to do the work that I do? Whether, again, I'm a butcher, baker, candlestick maker, whether I'm sweeping the floor or whether I'm in the boardroom, it all starts with me. It's also not a one-time thing. It is an ongoing process and an ongoing commitment to who I am and how I show up in the world. So just ask you, what is your purpose? What do you want more of in your life? What do you want less of? Share that in the chat. We'd love to hear from you. What is your purpose? What's your bigger purpose? And are you fortunate enough to have been able to find a way to channel that through your work? Help your team see the power of personal accountability. And so again, going back to what we talked about before, it's not just accountability to a task, it's an accountability to themselves. Are you engaged in work that is driving your purpose forward? Because when you figure out what your purpose is, like I said, it doesn't matter whether you're sweeping the floor or sitting in a boardroom. You're going to give honor and you're going to give passion to both activities, because you know that at the end of the day, sweeping the floor is every bit as important as maybe being in the boardroom. All that to say that not every CEO needs to sweep the floor. Of course, everyone's important, and there are certain people who can fulfill a role better than others. But at the same time, recognizing that we're all important, every member of our team is important, and each of them serve in different positions and in different roles depending on who's most capable of the assignment at the given time. So one of the most powerful things we can do to help people believe, achieve, and succeed is, number one, help them to believe in themselves, help them to believe in their gifts, the products and services that they offer to the world, that you've given them a fertile farm to sow into, and then help them to believe in the system that will assist them as they move into success. So, again, believing in themselves, belief in their gifts, products, and services, and then belief in a system that will assist them to succeed. And a question for us as leaders is, do we have that kind of self-belief ourselves? And if not, what are we doing to shore up in these three key areas? Again, we have to, it's more than just leading by example. It's really the way that we lead a very purpose-driven, aligned life. So I'm going to turn it over to Bruce to talk about results. Thank you, Bruce.
You bet. Thank you, Larendee. So just on the final portion of this, in terms of the 5 levels, what do we want from our life? What do we want from our business? What kind of results? What's the end game? If we said we want to see the end from the beginning, what would we be looking at? What are your immediate goals? And what will it look like when you actually have accomplished the goal? All of these things, we do the previous items with the intent of arriving somewhere. But like the Cheshire Cat in Alice in Wonderland, if we don't know where we want to end up, it doesn't really matter where we go. And so it's really important, I think, for us to have a sense of what we really truly want, and to be able to create that picture for our team. And to help understand what it is that they want. I love what Larendee said about aligning, in that it's really, I think, a key piece of leadership to help our people understand, our friends, our teammates, our family members, whoever it might be on our teams, what our goals are and what we hope to achieve at the end of the day. And so these are questions that we would love for you to think about and to be able to answer, and maybe you want to write them down or put them in the chat. And then, of course, we know that a goal that's not written down or that isn't followed up on will be difficult to achieve. And so, are we going to do monthly check-ins? Are we going to do quarterly check-ins? And those check-ins aren't to be, what we would say. In my previous life, where you get pounded on. It's more an honest return to report as to how we're doing, and what kinds of obstacles are we facing, what are our successes, what are the things that are going well, in terms of things that are aligning with our passions to get the results that we desire. So let's see, should we go to the next slide? So what we'd like, I think what we'd like to do now is turn the time back to Larendee and really kind of examine some of the conversation or some of the chat that you may have given us. So Larendee, I'll turn it back to you.
Thank you, Bruce. So it's been really great Bruce and I don't get to do enough of these, so it's been fun to spend the morning with you, Bruce. But would like to just ask each of you to consider, what are your goals? When we talk about mentoring our teams and working with them, we're not just talking about weekly, quarterly, and monthly meetings where we're looking at, did you accomplish a task? Kind of a very task-driven. We really encourage that at least once a month, that you take 15 minutes and you help people understand what they want from their life and if the work that they're engaged in is really supporting them. So if you join us next week, we're going to be talking about actually some forms that we have and some coaching forms that we use. So we hope you'll join us. We'll be delivering that content to you to show you how, when we really get this right, everything changes in our organization. And I really believe in this because I was very fortunate myself to work with someone who I didn't have all their credentials, but he believed in me and he believed in my purpose and he believed in my tenacity and my willingness to continue to show up. And as a result, I started out as a secretary receptionist in that organization, the third employee hired. And that's how Bruce and I met. Over time, by the time I left and retired 17 and a half years later, I was second in command at that organization. And I don't say that from a place of boast. I say it from a place of it really was one of the most enriching experiences in my life, to be able to have someone who believed in me, and then for me to be able to then turn around and have others help me to have belief in others and help them meet their dreams and their goals and their desires. So we've had some really good interaction on our chat this morning, and we're actually going to give away 2 gifts today. We're going to give one away to Diego Nunez. So if you're still on the line, if you will just put your email in the chat, and then also Chris Salbudis from Philo for Thought. We'd love to give you a gift this morning for your active participation. And as we close, we're going to share with you a video that we made a few years back. We have a program called Light Leadership, which stands for Lead with Compassion, Inspiration, Gratitude, Heart-Centered, and Team-Driven. So we're going to share this video with you, and in that regard, and we hope you have an amazing week, and we hope to see you back over the next 3 weeks as we give you ideas and input on how you really can continue to support your teams. So go ahead and pull that up for us. Thank you, In Concert Audio, for your help this morning and engineering all of this for us. We really appreciate it. Anthony, thank you so much for this platform to be able to share with your community, and we look forward to doing more great things. So let's go ahead and play that video, Matt.
How steep was the mountain? How long was the fight? In the face of something so wrong, somebody had to make it right. Through the night and the darkest hours, the promise and the faith you kept brought the fury and the danger to your
When I think about the word leadership, I think about a person that is gathering a group of people and leading toward a common goal, or keeping a group of people focused on a common goal.
dream alive. What kind of dream does a lifetime take? The courage in your eyes, the wisdom in your smile, the strength within your heart to walk the endless mile.
I find it really fascinating that our bodies and our minds and our spirits, everything about us can keep going even if we don't think we can.
Lead with compassion. Innovate and inspire.
Lead from a place of gratitude.
Heart-centered.
Team-driven.
Your life and the light you always shone. More than the world, more than this world, more than the world has ever known. How steep was